Hello guys, my own interview experiences, just keep in mind that this happened long back. I interviewed in 2000, 2001. 2001 to 2003 is when I did my MBA. So Feb, March, April 2001 is when I did a bunch of my interviews. And so I was terribly poor. I was ill prepared. I made a bunch of mistakes throughout my interview cycle. So I lacked belief. I wouldn't go into an interview thinking, look, I got this, I'm going to join one of these colleges. What more, it's just up to me to figure out which one of these four I am going to go. Because I'd done reasonably well in CAT, I'd got all the relevant calls and all of that. But I didn't have that belief, and it was evident. My academic performance was poor, so part of my brain was always they're going to ask me something from Fourier transform or Laplace transform, and I'm clueless about that. My brain was not thinking clearly enough to realize that, look, they're not going to know it. Why will they ask you on that? But that's what was going off in my mind. So about 30% of my brain was actively worrying about them asking me an academic question I would be clueless about. And so which made me just shrink as a person. So I was in that mode of just don't get beaten up, get out. Hopefully one of these interviews will fall in place. And that's the worst attitude to have going into interviews. And I had that. And so, in my defense, I was young with no idea about the world, and one sense of cocky kid, one sense an unsure kid. And sometimes people think that confident and unsure about themselves don't go together. They very much go. I'm very confident about one thing, very unsure about this. Know what I may figure out, but I have no idea about the world. It's all a combination. Fine. I was that kid completely. Fine. So I was belief part was completely not there. My preparation part was very poor. One of the first interviews was an IIM Indore interview, and I can't believe I'm going to say this one. They asked me, "What do you know about Indore?" And I knew jack about Indore, and what little I knew about Indore just slowly eased itself out of the room. Once my brain heard the question, what do you know about Indore? And so, that was my mind was I was a cricket kid. You're an Indian, you're in the 90s, you watch cricket all the time. And so, that's what we did. So, there was a weird one-day series between India and Sri Lanka, I think. I don't remember, or West Indies. One of those pointless things. One of the one days had been scheduled in Indore. And the pitch was so bad that the match got cancelled after a few hours. We were all livid. We said, look, aaj to cricket dekhne ko nahi mila. So that's the only thing I could remember about Indore, which is severely embarrassing. So I said, look, I don't know anything about Indore. And then they said, where is Indore from? And then I paused and processed, except I was not processing anything. And I couldn't recall any states in India. I kind of blanked out, and I said, Uttar Pradesh, which I know it is not the right answer. And you have to believe me when I tell you this. I knew even then it was not the right answer. Right? So it is one of those things where my tongue blurted out something because it had been too long a wait for an answer to come. And therefore it had to say something. It just said something from the first state in India. And then the look of utter disgust. They asked me to kind of, okay, theek enough with your interview, go out. For a long time I held it against, I was peeved with IIM Indore for two reasons. One, they severely embarrassed me in the interview, and then they gave me the admit. I was like, yeah, you guys should have some standards. You can't give an admit to a guy who's utterly tanking his interview. In their defense, I think they probably saw something in me which I didn't. They saw me for an absolutely scared, clueless 17-year-old, 18-year-old there who didn't know anything about, not 18-year-old, 21-year-old, doesn't matter, who's sitting there doing, and they backed, they saw something and then they said, look, let's have this. So that was my worst interview. After a couple more interviews, I think I warmed into it a little bit more. I even managed to have some fun in the interviews. I managed to even smile. I managed to be myself after 2-3 interviews. I could do that. We did only 4 or 5 interviews totally. I did Indore, Lucknow, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Calcutta. I did only 4 or 5 interviews. Back then the private sector was not so deep. I didn't know about Jamnalal Bajaj or RSP Jain or FMS. I didn't write the FMS exam. I didn't know about it. I hadn't applied to IIM Code because I think it was a new college. Don't ask me why I applied to Indore. It was been established that I didn't know much about the world. My IIM Cal interview was a breeze, an absolute breeze. IIM Cal, I finished and I knew I had it. But IIM Cal interview, they ask for mathematical puzzles in their thing, which I was rather looking forward to. My entire street cred or career or whatever I'd done till then was about being happy doing puzzles and numbers, and why would I not be happy doing it in an interview setting? I was like, I'm up for it. And I had won a bunch of these, participated and done a bunch of these Olympiad thingies. So I was confident that I would have a go at it, I would have a stab at it. As it turned out, I was the last person to be interviewed in the panel. So I was sitting there from 8 a.m. The interview process starts at 9, and it's a good 1:10, 1:15. When 1 o'clock it's supposed to finish, 1:15, 1:20 is when I'm going in. The three professors are all tired. They're like, look, yaar, khatam kar dete hain. Uske baad lunch hai. Uske baad dekhenge whether we want to do the, I don't know whether they had the second session or not, but they were all in like wind down mode. And then I knew everybody was in this last period of the class day mode or of the term mode. Khatam, uske baad we are done. Everybody was in that mode. And funnily enough, in that waiting room corridor, there was nothing to read, or we didn't have phones and all that. So I was bored. I was bored for 4 hours of just sitting there. How many times will you ask the guy who's just had his interview whether kya hua? 2 times you'll ask, 3 times you'll ask. Everybody is very anxious. And then you're the only guy who's asking, like, I know what will have happened. You go, I'm sitting and doing them. There was one couple of nice pamphlets about IIM Calcutta, about when they had started and what they had done and all that. And then this first question in my interview was, look, what do you know about IIM Calcutta? And here I'm reeling out when it was started, in partnership with whom, which institute, what year and all that. Some of those professors were stunned. They were like, this kid is spectacularly. One of the professors was going through all my certificates and all that. And then the other two were kind of like, a youngster from one of these IITs, geeky, nerdy fellow, he would have never prepared anything about IIM Cal, but then he's blowing our minds, giving facts that we didn't know about IIM Cal. All of which I learned in sitting there, which was fantastic. Totally went in my way. The second professor was going through all the records. You've done so many of these Olympiad thingies, so I'm not going to ask you this typical mathematical puzzle. You may crack it. Let me assume there's no point asking you that, so I'm not going to ask. My hat sank. I was rather looking forward to that. Not only was I looking forward to that, now I'm worried that, look, that is going to be filled with something else, and I suck at everything else. So I was not happy with the way that was going. Then the guy said, look, this is the last interview for the day for us. So can you tell us a joke? which worked out rather well for me. I told them a joke. They all laughed. They had a nice hearty laugh. And then they wanted to finish it off. But then they've asked me about, look, what do you know about IIM Cal? They've asked me a joke. And they are in proper complete wind down mode because they've had a good laugh. But they can't just let me go in 4 minutes. So the guy said, look, chalo yaar, I'll ask you a puzzle anyway, which he did. And I answered the puzzle, and it was very clear that I didn't know of the puzzle from beforehand, and I figured that out and then I answered. If you know it and you answer, then that doesn't count for much. If you get it wrong, it doesn't count for much. So I sat there, figured it out, the nice, very clear, logical approach, and I got it. And they're like, look, bye, have fun, have lunch and leave. So I'm like, done. Only 3 parts to the interview, and I nailed all 3. And I was like, look, ye to mil jayega. So it was a very happy contrast to I think my IIM Cal was my last interview. I started absolute devastatingly bad pitch of an interview and ended on a beautiful high with IIM Cal, which worked out rather nicely as a season. But I was severely ill prepared. So please don't be like me. Prepare well. I had guys tried to help me prepare. Not like I didn't have help. I had help. I refused to take it. And so don't be like me. Take help where possible. Iterate, practice, write, revisit. Don't be overconfident. Don't be cocky. Build some belief. Work on your body language. Work on your attire. Work on smiling and walking pleasantly. Work on your gait, your walk, your posture, everything. All of these things are important, and all of these things matter. Super guys. Best wishes.